Hello, the birth of factories. Now, a factory is simply a place where goods are made. Remember that during the Industrial Revolution, we are switching from the cottage industry to the factory industry. Now, think back, what was the cottage industry? Yeah, the cottage industry is when you are making goods in your home, in your cottage, so to speak. And now we are shifting that from the cottage where we're making goods at home to making goods by machines in factories. So we're going to have these factories start popping up all over the world at this time period. Now, the reason for this is you can get paid higher wages in the factory than you could on the farm. So if you're previously a laborer working in the farm, you are going to pick up your family, you're going to move to the city, move where the factory is located, and we'll talk about the growth of cities in just a little bit, but you're going to move away from your farm and go work in the factory because you are going to have higher wages, which then mean a increased quality of life. You're working in a factory day in and day out, which is going to cause some problems, but the quality of work that you're doing is easier, than it is less physically exhausting than it is working on the farm. You can make more money and thus you can have an increased quality of life. Now, cities are going to swell at this time period with these waves of job seekers leaving the countryside, leaving the farms, moving into the city to work in the factory. Now, I want you to think about some of the problems that might be associated with a large group of people moving to a city. The first and foremost problem is the cities are not designed for this many people. Okay, think of a really, really bad traffic jam. Okay, that road that you're on is not designed for that many cars, and that is going to be the problem that causes that traffic not to work. The same thing is going to be happening in these cities when you have these waves of job seekers moving into the cities, causing lots of problems. We're going to talk about those problems just a little bit later on. Now, the growth of the cities. Cities are going to develop around factories. Now, why might this be? People are going to want to live next to the place they work. It is easier to get there. There is some transportation, but commuting is just really not that probable. And it's not that practical at this time period. So cities are going to develop around these factories. And these factories are going to develop in clusters. You're not just going to have like one factory in one chunk of land. These factories are all going to develop around each other. And there's going to be a number of reasons for that. I want you to think back, why might all these factories develop together? Remember those three things you need: land, labor, capital. You're going to have the factories develop right there because that's where the land, the labor, and the capital is at. You need to build your factories near a source of energy. You need water or some way of making sure that your factory can exist. You need a railroad to get your goods out once you produce them and get raw materials into your factory. You need mines because you need iron ore for the most part. You need these different kind of things. If you don't have them, you cannot produce a factory right here because you do not have the capital, the labor, or the land needed to make that actually happen. Now, cities are also going to boom with population. Now, think back. Why might it be problematic to have a large group of people living in a tiny, tiny area? Okay, think about the example I gave with the traffic jam. The same sort of problems are going to be popping up right now. And this is known as urbanization. Urbanization, one of those fancy little vocab words which you are needing to know. This is city building and the movement of people into cities. You're leaving the rural area, you're moving into the city. That is going to be known as urbanization. Now, I want you to understand, cities at this time had no development plans. They are just built where they are going to be built. So you might have a school located right next to a dangerous factory, located next to a bar, located next to a hospital, then another school, and then maybe houses right through there. You want these things organized in some sort of plan. We're going to have the industrial, the factories in one part. You're going to have living areas in another part, maybe schools in another part, and hospitals in another part. So there's going to be no development plans at all. Additionally, there are no sanitary codes. So plumbing is not real popular at this time period. It's expensive. Not a lot of people have this plumbing. So you simply do your duty in a bucket and then dump that bucket out into the street, and there's no real problem with that. There are not garbage men to come pick up your trash, so you've got trash just piled all over the place. It is a very dirty, place to be living, and that's going to cause a number of other problems as well. And then there are no building codes. So you might be living in a building that is not structurally sound. That is going to be causing a number of problems as well. You might not have fire escapes in your building. So if your building lights on fire, you just get cooked, and that's going to be very problematic. A number of issues with the cities at this time period. Additionally, there is lack of adequate housing. As I was talking about, no building codes. You've got a large group of people moving into a city at one time. They need somewhere to live. They're going to basically just go wherever they can because a poorly built house is better than no house at all. There's going to be very little education, meaning the children there aren't really getting an education, so they're just going off to work, which is going to be happening. We'll talk about child labor a little bit later on. And there is no police protection, so crime is going to be able to be rampant. At this time period, you could also buy off someone if you want to commit a crime and get away with it because there's no one to stop you. Streets are not paved, which causes problems because mud is not a pleasant thing, okay? You cannot get from point A to point B. You might have your cart breaking down because of potholes and other issues that are going to be coming along with not having paved streets. As I talked about already, you have zero when it comes to sanitation workers, meaning your city is going to smell very, very bad, have large amounts of trash and sewage just pretty much sitting there because no one is there to clean it up. That is all for now. If you have any questions or comments, please put them down below. Otherwise, good luck.